welcome to the next session. So please take your seats. We are now starting the next session, Voices from the Downstream. We will be talking about the importance of developing the processing-related part of the value chain and the downstream-related activities. If we look at the development in this part of the value chain over the last years, some of the countries, for example China, has been taking lion's share of the processing capacity in the world. And it has become a major question that how do we have sufficient amount of processing capacity given the increased need of metals and some of the geopolitical considerations of this processing capacity, the location and where the metal gets consumed. This is an important topic because if we look at the sustainability transition that is taking place, just the previous panel was talking about the increased energy consumption. For the electricity consumption alone, we estimate that 2050 it will be 2.5 times bigger the electricity consumption than today. Similarly, we will introduce in increasing volumes batteries, hydrogens, and so on. These are significantly more materials-heavy ways of delivering the electricity and carrying the either electrons or molecules. For example, offshore wind takes more than 6 times more materials than the conventional gas or coal capacity to build. Similarly, EVs, roughly 20% more materials than the combustion engine is taking. So we will need significant volumes of metals for this sustainability transition. And as I already mentioned, there is an important geopolitical supply security considerations that are coming up increasingly now. It's not only about the origin of the molecules, but it's also where they are converted and beneficiated. So more supply in a sustainable way, cost efficiently, and in a supply secure way. That's the big theme of today's discussion. At the same time, the processing capacity has not increased like we would hope to see, and that's exactly the topic of today's panel. I'm extremely delighted to have 2 exciting panelists today with me here. Further from me is His Excellency, Dr. Abdullah A. Al-Ahmari. He is the Assistant Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources, Ministry for Planning and Development. And this is a position that covers a wide variety of critical areas, digital transformation, human resources development. There's a lot of data management, cybersecurity related topics, as well as planning and strategy. And he has vast experience from the last 30 years from the chemicals and oil and gas industries from a wide variety of topics, and I'm sure that we will hear some of that wisdom today. Left from me is Mr. Faisal Sultan. He is the Vice President and Managing Director of Lucid Motors. And his role is to oversee the strategy for Middle East expansion and operations. And you have extensive experience from the automotive industry. I looked the number of automotive brands that you have worked on, and I think 4 of the car brands that I have used in my lifetime were on the list. So it's an impressive list and experience from. And you have seen the change in the industry, and we look forward hearing some of that experience. And before your current role, you looked after the industrial clusters development here in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and especially the automotive policy part of it. So Lucid Motors is also an inspiring company. Like we were discussing before the panel, it's a technology company that has decided to go also to the assembly part. So you produce EVs and also powertrains for EVs. We will now hear from both of the panelists opening remarks. They will talk a little bit about their point of view when it comes to the processing and downstream and some of these considerations that we just mentioned. And then after that, we have a couple of questions that we will be asking from the panelists. I would like His Excellency to start.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm very happy to be part of this panel today to talk about very, very important subject. During the morning session with the ministers, we have heard a lot about the mining and the minerals in general. And I'm sure this session will focus more about green steel or green minerals in general. I know it's a very important subject, as you rightly stated. It's a very complicated and complex subject again. And I hope in this panel we will be discussing several areas, starting from the mining, to the production, to the supply chain, to the end user or consumer. We all know that steel is used everywhere, but the current production process, starting from mining all the way to the end user, is impacting our environment, and there is an urgent need to switch to green processing, green steel, and green minerals. And again, I hope through the interaction of some of the questions, we will be addressing some of the challenges, some of the maybe technologies that we hope we will be implementing, and some of the incentives that we actually need in order to maximize the use and the production of green steel.
Thank you. Mr. Faisal Sultan.
Thank you so much, actually. It's a privilege to be here and be talking about this important subject. I think, look, the way cars were manufactured, so when we talk about, let's say, minerals and metals, the world really is beginning to now realize that the automotive and the transportation sector is going to play a major role when it comes to sustainability, making this world a better place. Electrification has to happen. And as we've all seen, electrification really was not taking off. There was only one company that was trying to do it. And then now you see, 300, 400 plus companies, if you take all the Chinese counterparts that are in electrification. So I think electrification is the future. And when we talk about electrification, we must talk about the green metals, because electrification is going to have a large demand. We're talking about 20 folds of this rare metals and green metals and rare minerals consumption in the next 8 years only. And then beyond that, it's even hard to forecast what is going to happen. Where are these minerals going to come from? How are we going to make them cost effective? And basically, the private-public partnership will have to play a major role, as we were discussing as we were walking here. If that doesn't happen, the consumer is going to suffer at the end of the day. So the whole point of doing all of this is to bring the policies, the incentives, the policies, the explorations, the innovations that really need to combine all of this and make a process out of it that results in a consumer getting a product that is better and it's readily available. The infrastructure for charging is available, and the metals are bringing the cost down of the vehicle at the end of the day. So I've actually seen it when I was working in the internal combustion engine side of things, until 2017, 2018, with Ford, with General Motors, with Fiat Chrysler, Stellantis, Magna, all of the companies that I worked with, the supply chain was buying something completely different. The core metals that were sought after has now completely changed. Now we talk about nickel, now we talk about cobalt, now we talk about magnesium, now we talk about lithium.
Yes.
Before it was cast iron and aluminum. They're still there. They haven't really gone anywhere, and the usage of them has also not gone down that much, unless you take the cast iron engine. But the car's body is still using the same metal. But it's the rare metals, the green metals. Where are we going to find them? Currently, only 4 or 5 countries in the world, if you can probably count them in your hand, have that capability. So with the Vision 2030, what I like is it's all about reading into the future and trying to bring that back and implementing it. And this is why you see such a great gathering here, because the country of Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is definitely investing in finding this, making it easier to explore, and have it available for companies like Lucid, who are localizing their manufacturing plants in the kingdom now.
Thank you. It seems like we agree with the importance of the topic and the need to take action. You were highlighting some of the collaboration models between the public sector and private companies. Your Excellency, from the experience that you have, what are the type of solutions, strategies, solutions that you believe are critical, centric in solving this question around expanding the processing and downstream capacity that will meet the needs of the more green metals, but also is cost efficient and supply secure?
Very good. Well, let's start with some facts. So again, the steel will be with us for life.
Yes.
The second thing, the burning platform is, every ton we produce today from steel, we produce 2 tons of CO2. So it's major contributor to the carbon emission. 8% of the total carbon emission comes from the factories of steel. So these are the facts around the subject. Now, how to improve? We know a lot of efforts going everywhere to switch to green energy and green minerals. With that, there are some challenges, of course. First, the cost. If you ask today steel plant to switch to produce green products, it's a lot of cost. So without incentives or some help from governments, for example, they cannot do it. It's very expensive process. The second thing is the supply chain itself. If you look at the supply from mining all the way to production to the end customer, it's very complicated. But unfortunately, there is a lack of transparency. You cannot track and trace exactly what you have in the supply chain. So you have to have some technologies. Just one example that comes to mind is the blockchain. If we implement blockchain that you can really track and trace all the movements, and you work with the manufacturer and suppliers to make sure that you have the right due diligence in order to make sure that they are producing green minerals or green steel, and then that will go through the process. So in order to expand, just to answer your question, there are few basic things that should be done first. Again, I think the price, the transparency or the technology, and some incentives that we have to provide to the manufacturing facilities in order to switch to green products.
Mr. Faisal Sultan, from private sector point of view and with your experience, what have been efficient strategies and solutions that you have seen in action?
When a transformation is happening at the beginning, as His Excellency was kind of saying, it is very expensive. And I think, typically incentives and policies really it's a good balance that really works, is to have policies that are addressing some of those challenges, where it is the CapEx investment, the OpEx, from a training point of view, we talked about human resource development. All of that really needs to come together to make that expensive, become less expensive very fast. Yes. Because as we were discussing when we were walking here, if that doesn't happen, the technology becomes something that is not effective. And if that's the case, then the private sector loses interest and they take their money and they invest it somewhere else, right? So I think this needs to, it's a long-term process, but it needs to be shortened by innovation. So, there are a lot of technologies. I think one of the things that have not been done on the mining side, and I think, listening to His Excellency Khalid Al-Faleh when he was talking today, is one of the things that really haven't happened in the mining sector is the innovation. We're still doing things that like we were doing maybe 20, 30 years ago. And I think the new way of doing things will be to bring technology in, bring AI, bring blockchain, bring new methods like we were talking about. The seabed is full of minerals. It hasn't been touched. So yes, we dig these huge excavations and find mineral, but is there an untapped market that is just sitting around with some technology where it is more sustainable, more ESG governance, and then that can really bring the effectiveness so that the go-to-market is much faster. If that happens, I think we will all win, and I think that's really what is really needed, because the curve on the electric vehicles, if we're talking 2030 globally, 40 million electric vehicles are going to be in the market. 40 million electric vehicles are going to need 80 kilograms of this, and 8 kilograms of nickel, and 8 kilograms of cobalt, and 80 kilograms of copper. Where is this going to come from? Because if you compare it with the internal combustion engines, at least 1/4 less of these metal quantities were being utilized. So putting 40 million electric cars is like 160 to 200 million more ICE cars on the road when it comes to this metal usages.
Plus building the charging infrastructure.
Charging infrastructure is on top of that. So,
exactly.
So I think there's a big challenge in front of us. We need to find new ways to bring metals productions much faster, and I think the governments and the policymakers will really have to come together to find innovative ways that can bring that cost curve down.
Yeah. Coming from Finland, we have experienced the wind power boom, and today we are the lowest electricity cost country in Europe, and wind is the lowest cost way of producing electricity in Finland.
It's amazing.
It's amazing, and it has happened in less than 15 years. So 15 years ago, there was heavy governmental support, regulatory support that was basically enabling, and now it has gotten in 15 years to that cost-efficient way to produce. What, from your point of view, what regulatory changes should be considered and potentially developed in order to fast-track the development of processing capacity, green metals, locally produced? Maybe we start with His Excellency.
Yeah, sure. I think several, I can just mention a few of them, but let me start with something about, helping the plants or the production lines for more to be competitive. So there should be some help there. The second thing is just to enforce the use of recognized standards and certification system that's across, globe. Also, there should be something done for the procurement. So, in terms of putting green metals in public for public procurement from governments, and also some incentives for private sectors in terms of procurement to put priority for green metals. So that is still gray area that it's open actually today. You have the option, either you go this way or the other way. Also, the environmental impact, there should be emphasized also to make these requirements for mining and production and supply chain. Tax breaks and some incentives for either the supply chain companies or the production lines or the end user. And also, as you said before, the innovation should be enhanced and facilitated more in order to bring more ideas to bring, some products or some technologies that will help throughout this process.
Under your leadership, are you busy developing or planning in your ministry some of this kind of regulatory moves?
Correct. We have the digital transformation. We have also launched actually the innovation program within the ministry, and that will cover the whole process from idea to production. And we hope that we will be producing some of products or technologies that will support that direction.
We look forward hearing the outcomes on that one. Mr. Faisal.
So I'll just double down on what His Excellency mentioned. I think, look, the public-private partnership is, as I said, is going to be the key here. Technology is going to be number two. And when it comes to OEM, I think the demand is already there. We know that the electric vehicles, even though that the ramp up of electric vehicles that was forecasted 3 years ago has slowed down, but it's still a potential very, very large growth curve that is happening on electric vehicles and its infrastructure. So the demand is there. We definitely need to work. The OEMs also need to play their part. So what a company like Lucid Motors, our company, is doing is we're working with King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in what are the new ways to find this material, what are the material reserves available in the kingdom, around us, what can we do to tell them from a demand perspective, what is coming in our batteries in the future, what type of batteries are we going to use, so that they can concentrate on their research and development in the right areas, right? So that's a part that we really need to play. We're working with King Abdullah City of Science and Technology here in Riyadh to that aspect, also to bring in some more technology, digitalization, procurement skills, what is really needed to get this thing going in a much faster way to have these minerals available. And then we're working with our partners, like His Excellency, across all Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Investment, what are the key companies, the value chain, the supply chain that really need to exist in the kingdom to support us in the future. So the OEM has a very large, part to play here, and and then once all these blocks are available in front of us, we can all put the strategies together to come out with policies that will help, the consumer.
We have still time for brief closing question, and maybe this time we go with Mr. Faisal Sultan and then His Excellency. There's a lot happening in the world at the moment. We will next week, I think it's Monday, Donald Trump will be basically the president. There is increasing geopolitical tension, EVs, it appears like the EV cost point has really broken through, and in multiple countries, basically the EV adoption is clearly above the ICU adoption. For this audience, what would be your advice, what they should watch out in this space of processing and the processing capacity downstream? If we look the year of 2025, be it globally or here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, what's the advice, that watch out point?
Yeah, I think for the private sector, I would definitely say that there's a lot of opportunities. It really doesn't matter, which part of the government is going to come in or which political party is going to, the demand is the demand, right? Electrification is really happening. The sustainability focus is actually now coming back. So for a few years, it kind of went away. But now all of a sudden everyone is like, oh, Paris Accord, we got to do this. We're falling behind. Oh, there's these, floods. They're continuing to happen all over the world. All of these, the fires in Los Angeles. My daughter is affected. She had to run away from the university. So, these are real things that are happening to us human beings. And I think the sustainability is really going to drive, and therefore electrification is not going to go away. The efficiency has to be the focal point, whether it's mining, whether it's finding the minerals, whether it's producing an electric vehicle like Lucid Air that drives, the longest range. bringing the battery sizes down as we are trying to do and keep the range as we were talking. So everyone has to play a part to bring efficiency back into the equation. And with that, there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of opportunities for innovators to step up and find, what can they do to make this world a better place, but at the same time make some money.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think the focus today is more on solar energy. While there are a lot of other, renewable sources, like the wind, like the geothermal, and some others. I think we should be covering everything, because it's good to have, for example, from a production point of view, to have a hybrid, plant where you use the wind and solar and geothermal. So if you don't have sun, you can still run your plant. If you don't have, wind, still you can run your plant, and so on. So this is one aspect, is just to cover all, sources of renewable energy. Switching to, for example, hydrogen. Hydrogen is much better than, other sources. But if you transport hydrogen from one area to another, it's risk, and it's very costly, and it will reduce actually its efficiency.
Yeah.
So there are other things that can be used, like ammonia, and I'm sure Faisal is aware of that. So for the audience, because we have mix from government, from private sector, from consumers, and so on, I think everyone should be working in his or her own area, but at the same time, we should be working as one team, and because the process is complex, as we stated in the beginning, and it needs to be addressed at all stages. Again, from mining all the way to production and end user or consumers.
Thank you. Thank you for the panelists for the interesting discussion, and thank you for the audience.
Thank you.